Hello everyone, hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today we'll witness the emotional reunion you've been waiting for. Tu Tien finally steps off the bus and runs straight into Jack's arms at the gate. And that same night, they sit by the fire to reveal every painful secret from the days they were apart. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes. Early evening settles over the farm like a soft blanket. The sky is still bright enough to show the outline of the gate, the new fence, the garden paths, everything Jack built while his heart was breaking. And then, at the end of the road, a bus stops. Tu Tien steps down slowly, legs stiff from the ride, shoulders tense as if her body still expects the world to pull the ground out from under her. She takes one step, then another, scanning the quiet road like she's afraid this might be another false hope. But this time, it's real. Jack is standing outside the gate. He looks thinner. His hair is messier than usual. His eyes are red like he hasn't slept in days. He's trying to stand tall, but his hands shake just slightly at his sides, like his body doesn't trust good news anymore. Tu Tien freezes. For a heartbeat, neither of them moves. It's like the universe holds its breath to make sure this moment doesn't break. Then Jack's voice cracks. "Tien!" Her name comes out like a prayer. Tu Tien's lips part, but no sound comes. Her eyes fill instantly. She takes a step forward, then another, and suddenly she's running. Jack runs too. They meet right at the gate, and it isn't a perfect romantic reunion. It's messy, it's raw, it's tears and shaking hands, and both of them holding on like if they let go, she'll disappear again. Jack cups her face, staring like he needs to memorize every detail. "You're here," he whispers. "You're really here." Tu Tien can only nod, crying so hard her shoulders tremble. "I'm sorry," she chokes out. I tried to come back." Jack pulls her into his chest, arms locked around her, and for a long time, he doesn't say anything. He just breathes, like he's finally remembering how to live. Behind them, Mother Ly steps out onto the porch. The moment she sees Tu Tien, her hands fly to her mouth. She rushes down the steps, sobbing openly, and wraps both of them in her arms. "My child, my daughter," she keeps repeating. "Thank heaven, thank heaven." Tu Tien clings to her, crying into her shoulder like a girl who has finally reached home after a storm that never seemed to end. Even the wind feels softer, even the yard feels warmer, because the missing piece of the house has finally come back. Later, after the tears slow down and the shock settles, the evening turns quiet in the best way. Jack insists Tu Tien takes a warm shower first, and while she's inside, he moves around the yard like a man trying to keep his hands busy so his heart doesn't explode all over again. He sets up the small grill near the outdoor stove. He brings out plates and cups. He lights the charcoal and watches the flame catch, eyes still wet but calmer now. Tu Tien comes out wearing clean clothes, hair still damp, cheeks pink from the hot water. She looks exhausted, but her eyes are brighter than they've been in weeks. Jack walks up immediately, voice softer than usual. "Are you cold?" he asks. "I'm okay," she says. Then she adds, almost shyly, "I just want to stay here, near you." That sentence hits Jack harder than any speech could. He nods and gently takes her hand. "Then we'll stay here," he says, "right by the fire." They cook together, side by side, like they used to. Jack grills simple meat and vegetables for a small BBQ. Tu Tien rinses herbs, arranges plates, and keeps glancing at him as if she still can't believe he's real. The smells start to rise: smoke, garlic, warm rice, grilled meat. The sound of sizzling fills the space between them, comforting and normal, like the world is finally returning to its shape. Mother Loy sits nearby, watching them with swollen eyes and a relieved smile. She doesn't talk much, she just keeps looking at Tu Tien, like she's afraid blinking will make her vanish again. When the food is ready, they sit close together on low stools near the fire. Jack keeps placing the best pieces on Tu Tien's plate without even thinking. She keeps trying to push some back to him. "You eat," she insists. Jack shakes his head. "No, you first. I need to see you eating in front of me, then I'll believe you're safe." Tu Tien's eyes fill again, but she smiles through it. "Okay," she whispers. They eat slowly, letting warmth return to their bodies. The fire crackles, the garden rustles softly in the night breeze, and for the first time in a long time, the silence doesn't feel scary. It feels peaceful. After dinner, Jack adds more wood to the fire. The flames brighten, painting gold over their faces. Tu Tien wraps her hands around a warm cup of tea. Her voice is quiet when she finally speaks. "I need to tell you everything," she says. Jack nods immediately, leaning closer. "I'm listening." She takes a deep breath, and the story begins to spill out, not like a dramatic speech, but like someone finally releasing a burden she's been carrying alone. "I got lost in the forest," she says. "I thought I knew the path, but the fog came in, and I couldn't find my way. I walked for hours, my legs were shaking. I thought I was going to faint again." Jack's jaw tightens, but he stays silent, forcing himself to let her speak. "Then I found a small wooden house," she continues. "Say, an old grandma lived there. She was a healer. She brought me inside, lit a fire, gave me medicine. She let me wash in the stream. She gave me warm clothes. Jack, if I hadn't met her, I don't know what would have happened." Jack's eyes close for a second, like he's absorbing the fear he never got to witness. Tu Tien swallows and keeps going. "The next day, I walked until I reached the city. But I had no money. I didn't even have my phone. I tried to borrow one, but I couldn't remember your number." Jack's face twitches with pain, but he nods. I ended up sleeping outside," she admits softly. "In a park, just one night. I held a bottle of water an old man gave me, and I kept thinking, if I fall asleep too deeply, something bad could happen. But I was too tired." Jack's hand slides over to hers, gripping tight. "And then," she says, voice trembling, "I found a restaurant. I asked if I could wash dishes for one shift. I worked as fast as I could. I just kept thinking, I need to get home, I need to get home. They paid me enough for the bus." She lets out a shaky laugh, half relieved, half embarrassed. "So, I washed dishes to buy my way back to you." Jack stares at her, eyes glossy, and his voice comes out rough. "You shouldn't have had to do any of that," he says. "You should have been safe with me." Tu Tien looks down. "I wanted to be." I didn't know how to get back faster." Jack pulls her hand to his lips and kisses her knuckles, slow and careful, like an apology. "I need to tell you something too," he says. Tu Tien looks up, instantly tense. "What?" Jack takes a breath, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "I found out about the medical centre," he says quietly. "I know you went for a checkup." Tu Tien's face goes still. Jack continues, voice gentle but heavy. "I went there. The doctor told me about your symptoms. He told me you needed more tests. And He swallows hard. "I hated myself, Tien, because I didn't notice. I was so busy talking about projects and money and deadlines, and you were carrying that alone. Tu Tien's eyes fill again, but this time with a different kind of sorrow. I didn't want to ruin your biggest chance, she whispers. Min Hung was so important to you. I thought if I told you, you'd lose focus, you'd worry, you'd blame yourself. Jack shakes his head immediately. I already blame myself, he says, but I'd rather worry with you than live without you. The words hang in the air like a promise. Tu Tien leans forward and rests her forehead against his shoulder, crying quietly. Jack wraps both arms around her and holds her close, rocking slightly as if he's calming a child. Except this time, he's calming both of them. Later, when the fire burns lower and the night grows still, they stand together and walk into the garden. The grass is damp with dew. The flowers sway gently. Jack brings a watering can. Tu Tien holds a smaller one. They water the plants slowly, quietly, letting the routine stitch their hearts back together. This garden, Tu Tien says softly. It feels different now. Jack glances at her. Because you're here, he replies. It was never meant to be beautiful without you. Tu Tien smiles faintly and Jack feels something inside him finally unclench. They finish watering and stand for a moment, looking at the fence, the path, the young plants, proof that even during the worst days, something was still growing. Jack reaches for her hand. Tu Tien squeezes back. And in the quiet of their rebuilt home, under the soft winter night, they don't need big promises, just one simple truth. She's back. And this time, they're not letting go. Jack keeps holding Tu Tien's hand as they walk back toward the fire. The yard feels calmer now, like the whole place has been waiting for her to step back into it. Mother Loy has already gone inside to rest, but before she did, she kissed Tu Tien's forehead twice and told Jack very firmly, no more letting her go anywhere alone. Now it's just the two of them again, quiet, tired, safe. They sit down near the low stove where the embers are still glowing. Jack adds one last piece of wood and watches the flame catch. The firelight paints Tu Tien's face in warm gold, and for the first time, Jack can truly look at her without the fear of losing her in the next second. He studies the small bruises on her arms, the redness around her eyes, the way she holds her shoulders like she's still bracing against cold nights. You're shaking, he says softly. I'm not cold, Tu Tien answers, but her voice is thin. I think my body just hasn't stopped being scared yet. Jack nods, understanding too well. He shifts closer and wraps his arm around her shoulders. She leans into him immediately, like her body has been waiting for this exact shape of comfort. For a few minutes, they just listen to the crackle of the fire and the distant sound of insects in the grass. The silence is finally gentle. Then Jack clears his throat, voice low. Tell me the part you didn't say, he murmurs, the part you're still hiding. Tu Tien freezes slightly. Jack doesn't push, he just keeps his arm around her, steady and patient. After a long breath, she whispers, I was afraid. Of what? He asks. Of everything, she admits. Of getting sick. Of ruining your chance with Min Hung. Of becoming a problem you have to carry. Jack's jaw tightens. He turns his face toward her. Tien, he says carefully, you are not a problem. You are my person. Her eyes flick up to his, full of that familiar stubbornness and softness all mixed together. I know, she whispers. But when you love someone, sometimes you do stupid things to protect them. Jack exhales, almost a laugh, but not quite. And sometimes, he replies, when you love someone, you don't realize you're breaking them while trying to protect them. Tu Tien's lips tremble. She nods slowly, understanding the truth in it. Jack takes her hand and holds it between both of his. From now on, he says, we do it together. No secrets, no disappearing. No, I'm fine when you're not. Tu Tien wipes at her cheek. Okay, she says, voice small. Together. Jack's eyes soften. Tomorrow, he adds gently, we go for a full checkup, not just a quick visit, real tests, and I'm going with you. Tu Tien hesitates for half a second, then nods again. Okay, she repeats, and this time it sounds like relief. Jack squeezes her hand, then rests his forehead against hers for a brief moment. I'm sorry, he whispers, for not seeing it sooner, for being so focused on the project that I missed what was right in front of me. Tu Tien shakes her head. You were working so hard, she says. You were trying to build everything, and I didn't want to be the reason it fell apart. Jack looks at her, eyes shining, eyes. Nothing matters if you're not here, he says simply. That sentence makes Tu Tien's breath catch. She leans forward, pressing her face into his shoulder. Jack holds her tighter, one hand on her back, the other resting on her hair. Slow, protective, like he's promising without words. They stay like that for a long time, until the fire burns lower and the night grows deeper. Eventually, Tu Tien pulls back slightly and lets out a shaky breath. Can I tell you something else? She asks. Jack nods immediately. Anything. Tu Tien looks toward the garden, toward the fence Jack built, toward the path lined with flowers that now feels like a real home instead of an unfinished dream. When I was sleeping outside, she says quietly, I kept thinking, maybe I don't belong anywhere. Maybe I'm just someone who keeps getting lost. Jack's heart clenches. Don't say that. I'm not saying it because I believe it now, she explains, voice trembling. I'm saying it because that's what fear does. It lies to you when you're alone. Jack nods slowly. I know, he says. I had my own lies too. Tu Tien glances at him. What lies? Jack stares into the fire for a moment, then admits. Sometimes I thought, maybe you left because you didn't love me anymore, or because you were tired of this life. And then I hated myself for thinking that. Tu Tien's eyes widen. Jack! I know, he says quickly. It was stupid. But when you don't have answers, your mind makes monsters. Tu Tien reaches up and touches his cheek gently. I never stopped loving you, she says, voice steady now. Even when I was terrified, even when I was exhausted. The only thing I wanted was to come back. Jack closes his eyes under her touch like the words heal something deep. He opens them again and looks at her, serious. Then promise me, he says. No matter how hard it gets, you don't run alone again. Tu Tien swallows, then nods. I promise, she whispers. Jack's shoulders relax slightly like he's been holding that breath for 20 days. They sit quietly a bit longer, sipping the last of the warm tea. The stars above the yard look clearer tonight, like the sky itself is relieved. Then Tu Tien laughs softly, surprising herself. You know what's funny? She says. Jack raises an eyebrow. What? I wash dishes like my life depended on it, she says, a small smile forming. And the owner paid me more than I expected. I held that money like it was a golden ticket. Jack chuckles quietly, then his expression turns tender again. You're so strong, he says. Tu Tien shakes her head. I wasn't strong, she admits. I was just desperate to come home. Jack brings her hand to his lips again, kisses it slowly. "That's strength," he says, "and it's also love." Tu Tien looks at him, eyes warm. "And you?" she asks. "How did you survive 20 days? Jack's smile fades a little. "I didn't," he says honestly. "I just kept moving. Work in the morning, searching at night, calling, asking, posting, driving. And then," he swallows. "Then I found out about your checkup and it hit me like I failed you twice." Tu Tien's eyes fill again. "You didn't fail me," she says.
"I hid it. And I didn't notice," he replies. She shakes her head, firm now. "We both made mistakes," she says. "But we're here. We're together. That's what matters." Jack nods slowly, letting her words settle. When the fire becomes only embers, Jack stands and offers his hand. "Come inside," he says. "You need real sleep, in a real bed, with a door locked." Tu Tien stands with him, still holding his hand. Before they go in, she looks back at the garden once more. The flowers, the soft grass, the path. "I thought I'd never see it again," she whispers. Jack turns her gently toward him. "You will," he says. "Every day, because you're not leaving again." Tu Tien nods, a small smile finally staying on her face. They step into the house together.
Jack locks the door, not because the yard is dangerous, but because he needs that sound, needs the click of safety, needs to know tonight the world can't steal her again. And as they walk toward the bedroom, Tu Tien squeezes his hand once, tight. "Jack," she whispers. "Yeah." "I'm home." Jack swallows hard, eyes shining. "I know," he answers, "and I'm not letting go." Tu Tien finally steps off the bus and sees Jack waiting at the farm gate. They run to each other and reunite in tears, holding on as if letting go might make her disappear again. Mother Loy rushes out too, crying with relief as she embraces Tu Tien like a daughter returned from a storm. That evening, the home fills with warmth as Jack and Tu Tien cook together, grill a simple BBQ and sit by the fire to share everything that happened. Tu Tien explains how she got lost in the forest, was saved by an elderly healer, reached the city, slept outside in a park, and washed dishes at a restaurant to earn bus money. Jack confesses his desperate search, the sleepless nights, and the painful discovery of her hidden medical visit. They agree. No more secrets, no more facing fear alone. Afterward, they water the garden together under the quiet night sky. Home restored, love steady again.